I, 29F, dated a guy Joe, 30M, for 3 months before he left me to go back to his ex Kim, 30F. Right after we broke up I found out I was pregnant and now I'm at 24 weeks. I let him know and he was ecstatic. Turns out his girlfriend had fertility issues and would likely never be able to get pregnant naturally, and he has always wanted to be a father. Getting back together was out of the question for both of us, so he's still with his girlfriend. Joe was only allowed at the initial appointment because of COVID-19, and we found out I was having twins. According to Joe, when he told Kim, she had a mental breakdown about her infertility and wanted to talk to me. I met them at their house and Kim stated that she wanted to be involved in my pregnancy because she would eventually be the children's stepmother. She started telling me that I needed to do a home birth, that I needed to formula feed so that they could have the babies half of the week, that she wanted 1 boy and 1 girl, and that she wanted the kid to call her mama since they would be calling me mommy. I shut her down and said I would make the best choices for my children and my body and left. Kim continued to be overbearing and texting me every day about my eating habits, exercise habits, and ing about how her job wouldn't let her take maternity leave. At the virtual genetics counseling appointment, she attended instead of Joe and took over the whole meeting trying to talk about her family history, which wasn't relevant. When it came time for my 20-week level 2 scan, they allowed me 1 guest and Joe suggested I take Kim instead of him, which I refused to do. Joe did end up coming and he found out the gender because I wanted to keep it a surprise for me so we could throw a gender reveal party. I put a pregnancy announcement on my social media and then she put up an announcement saying they were expecting twins, the non-traditional way, and how blessed she was. I was irritated but I kept my mouth shut. Then she threw a gender reveal party and posted it on social media. I wasn't even invited. She also announced that she's having a baby shower. I commented on her posts and told her to stop treating me like a surrogate, that the kids weren't hers, and that Joe didn't have any claim or custody of the kids until they are born. I then called Joe and reiterated all of this and stated that I would not be seeing either of them until we went to family court, and that my mother would be my birthing partner. He and Kim and some of her friends and family are saying I'm an asshole, and her mother even called and insisted I give her one of my babies. Like, this is the Parent Trap? I'm definitely getting a lawyer ASAP. Y'all have scared the shit out of me, but I'm happy you did. We used condoms because I do not react well to hormonal birth control, and I had to wait to get a non-hormonal IUD because of other medical issues. The Thursday I posted this, I went to the police and they stated that there was nothing they could do because a crime hadn't been committed. In my state, orders of protection are criminal or family, so I was able to get one against Joe. On Friday, I did get a lawyer and they let me know in my state there was nothing I could do as far as custody before the babies are born. So I will be leaving my state soon to ensure that this isn't my baby's home state and I can't be charged with anything. Kim came to my job, damaged my car, and broke a bunch of office windows. I work with kids, so she was arrested for not just the criminal damage and trespassing but also child endangerment, so hopefully that works in my favor. Also, if Joe did it on purpose, I don't think Kim knew, because she was screaming at me about how I stole her life and everything I had was supposed to be hers. I have orders of protection against both Kim and Joe. I left the state anyway and Joe and Kim started harassing me again because there's no legal jurisdiction when you leave the state. But I have enough evidence that I was able to press charges in my current state as well and will be pursuing a restraining order here. Recently, my cousin and cousin-in-law have been thinking about relocating to our state because of recent job opportunities, and we've hosted them in the past when they visited. The first time they stayed with us, before my son was born, my nephew seemed to develop a strong attachment to my wife and always wanted to be near her. He drew a picture of a heart and picked some flowers from our yard and gave them to her before they left, saying he loved her. My wife thought this was sweet and gently handled his crush by telling him she would always love him as his aunt. But she was sure he would find another girl to fill his heart soon. He told her no, she was his girlfriend. This weekend, they were staying with us again, and my nephew again wanted to be near my wife every chance he got. His mom and dad noticed and told him that because my wife now had to care for our son, she couldn't pay attention to him as much as before. He got upset, telling us that she was his girlfriend, and had a meltdown, which caused my son to start crying. When my wife got up to take our son to another room to calm him down, my nephew got up to follow and his dad had to forcibly restrain him from following them. I stood up to block the hallway into the separate room just in case he got away from his dad. Once they calmed him down, they apologized for his behavior and said they would keep better tabs on him. Here's the part where I may be the asshole. I told my cousins I didn't feel comfortable with my nephew being so possessive of my wife, and I know for sure she didn't. Especially since he seemed to be so jealous of our son. I told them I couldn't allow their son in our home until he learned to control himself and understand that my wife was not his girlfriend. I apologized but asked them to get a hotel room for the rest of their stay and not to visit us again unless they left my nephew behind with people they could trust and knew would care for him, while they searched for jobs in our state. They didn't say anything but looked saddened and went to the guest room with their son to pack up their bags. I guess they must have told my extended family what happened because my paternal grandmother called me this afternoon, telling me that I should have been more understanding and that I was wrong to ask them to leave. Am I the asshole? Technically, my cousin is my second cousin. My dad is an only child, so the cousin I refer to in my post is the son of my own dad's first cousin. My paternal grandmother and his paternal grandfather were siblings. I'm not sure if this is correct, but his autistic son would technically be my third cousin. The reason I refer to him as my nephew is because he's the generation after mine in our family tree, and it's less of a mouthful to refer to him as cousin X removed. A lot of people have posted that it's not correct to refer to him as my nephew, but to be frank, I don't care. And my family's never followed this traditional genealogy nomenclature. Without being specific, in the western state I was born and grew up in, it's not uncommon to refer to even close, unrelated adults as uncles or aunts. I call him my nephew because my cousin and I were close, and I still hope to have a close relationship with him if at all possible. Though I don't know how after this situation. Some have asked if I was jealous of my nephew calling my wife his GF. The first time, I thought it was amusing and was surprised that he had any romantic notions towards anyone, let alone my wife. Remember, in my mind he's my nephew and I never thought of him as anything other than a large kid because of his developmental delays and normal, for him, childlike behavior. Regarding the situation that happened this weekend, I was only concerned for my wife and son's safety. I didn't know how he would react and followed my cousin's lead, but wasn't about to let him get near my wife and son once they left the room. I don't know what was said to my paternal grandmother, but I don't want to react in anger and want to talk to my cousin once we've both had time to process what happened and calmed down. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, She would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario, they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I am part-timing in an IT company that is very close-knit. My boss Steven and his wife were always sweet. It was my first month and it was my boss's birthday week. So he and wife Melissa were kind enough to include me in this fancy dinner they were taking everyone to. A week prior to the dinner, Melissa added everyone to a group chat and asked whether we had any suggestions on where to eat. I told her that I am fine with anything as long there are vegetarian options available or at least chicken. They brought their daughter Steph to the dinner and she is a sweet little girl. Now Steph was really interested in me and she kept on asking me questions about how I look the way I look. Now I am short, 5 feet, but can be somewhat deemed as fit to today's generation. I was transparent with her and told her that I don't restrict myself to certain foods but rather eat everything in moderation. Plus I have a plant-based diet and home-cooked meals so that helps, and I also lift weights. Now Melissa overheard our conversation partially. She pulled me aside and told me that Steph was recovering from eating disorder, so she encouraged me to be honest with her, and not lie to her and not to order anything that screams diet. When I saw the menu, there were little to no vegetarian options available. It didn't have anything for me. I was very disappointed and made a comment that, oh wow, there are no vegetarian options. Melissa chimed in and said that eating meat once in a while won't affect my weight. Now, when I say plant-based diet, it's not that I don't eat meat, but I only eat chicken maybe once a week as a side dish, and certain types of fish occasionally, but other than that I mostly eat vegetarian dishes. My food habits are not for my weight, but for my religion/culture. It has nothing to do with my weight. When the waiter came in, I was still glued to my menu when all the others had already ordered. Melissa said that oh, she will have the duck too, and I interrupted and said that no, I will have the garden salad. I hate salads, but there were no other veg options. Melissa got quiet. After a few minutes she told me that I shouldn't have lied and lead on her daughter if I was going to order a skinny salad and starve myself. She said that I am just like those IG influencers who lie to impressionable young girls about their food habits and bodies, and I just proved that by ordering a salad after giving her daughter a "don't restrict yourself" speech, and I probably triggered her eating disorder. I tried to explain that I only ordered a salad because there was no other option in the menu for me, but then she said that I should have just sucked up and eaten the duck as it isn't going to affect my weight, but then again, I corrected that it is a religious thing and not a diet thing. She said that if I eat chicken then obviously I would eat other animals too, and I was just putting up an act. It was horrible. She completely tore me down and I immediately left.